I was 15 years old when I found out that I was pregnant. I was so scared to tell my parents because I didn't know how they were going to react or respond to the news. So I decided to hide my pregnancy from them for as long as possible. A friend's mom found out and decided that she needed to do the right thing and to share the news with my parents about my pregnancy. My life took a turn for the worst inside the walls of my home after my parents found out that I was pregnant. I was a daddy's girl growing up, and my dad seemed to take the news the hardest, and I saw him turn into somebody that I didn't even know anymore. My mom was torn between my dad wanting me to have an abortion and me fighting against that request. I wanted to keep my baby from the start, from the moment that I found out I was pregnant. It wasn't even an option inside of me to have an abortion. I knew that abortion was wrong even when I was a little girl. I was taught that it was wrong. So I was very, very traumatized and devastated when my parents reacted the way that they did to my pregnancy. And as time went on, as the days passed, the threats and the pressure to go have an abortion became worse and worse and worse until I finally couldn't take any more of that. My dad was so broken and so upset that he actually threatened to take his own life if I didn't follow through with the abortion. I could not live with that. And so I adhered to their request and we went to the nearest Planned Parenthood the next day. It was very dark and drab in there. It was not an atmosphere that made me feel comfortable at all. I remember looking around the room and seeing all of the young women there to do the exact same thing that I was, and it made me so upset that I began to cry. And my quiet tears turned into weeping and sobbing so loudly that my mom went up to the receptionist and asked if I could be seen early because I was creating a scene and upsetting the other women in the waiting room. And so I was taken back early. I was laid on a table where I was given an ultrasound, and I wasn't supposed to see the monitor that she was looking at, but I was able to turn my head in just the right position that I saw my baby. I saw my baby. I saw the fluttering heartbeat. I knew exactly what I was looking at, and in that moment, I just started to cry again because I knew that I could not follow through with this abortion, especially after seeing my baby on that screen. And the worker knew it too. She looked at me and she said, she was trying to console me with these words when she said that I was 8 weeks along, and she said, "That's very early." And I think that she was trying to encourage me that I wasn't as far along as I thought, but to me, I was farther along than I thought that I was. And I looked at her and I said, "I can't do this. I just can't have an abortion. My parents are the ones who want me to be here, and I just can't do this." And so she had to take me back out to my parents, and my parents had to take me home because by law, it is illegal to have an abortion if you're being forced into one. So we went home. That car ride home was terrifying, and that following week, the pressure and the threats at home were even worse. And it got to the point again where this time I didn't have the strength to fight against the request. I was starting to experience morning sickness on top of feeling drained emotionally. And so I remember laying in the bed, and my mom came into the room and she got down on her knees and begged me to go through with it because things were just that bad in our home at that time. And so I gave in to that request, and this time they took me to a different abortion clinic, not Planned Parenthood. And when we pulled up to the clinic, it looked more like an old house than a medical facility. I was taken back to a counselor who had to counsel me to make sure that I really wanted to go through with the abortion, and she also tried to console me by telling me that my baby looked more like an alien at this stage in pregnancy than a baby. I just nodded my head and went along with everything at that point, and I signed some papers that stated I wasn't being forced into the abortion. I wasn't given an ultrasound. I was taken right back to the room where they performed the abortions, and I was strapped to a bed. I do remember that there were 2 workers in there at that time, and there was one on each side of me, and they were holding my hands, and the abortion doctor came in. He did not look at me. He did not speak to me. He simply performed the abortion and he left the room. When he performed the abortion, I remember hearing my baby being sucked out of my womb and into that machine that he turned on. And it was very, very painful. The tears were just streaming down my cheeks. I had no words, and I felt such a shame because I had never been treated that way by a doctor. I had always received such wonderful care up to that point in my life. Being a 15-year-old, I had an awesome pediatrician, and so that shocked me for him to not look at me, to speak to me, to not tell me what he was about to do. Nothing. After that, I was taken back to a waiting area where there were other women who had also just had abortions, and I was taken back there for observation for a little while, and then I was taken home. The grieving process was very hard because I did it all by myself. I remember coming home and bleeding huge clots of blood that were larger than eggs and being really scared about that. And I remember being in a lot of pain with a lot of cramping, and I remember rocking back and forth on the floor to ease my pain and just crying and crying. And there was one day when I pulled out a sketch pad and I actually sketched what I saw on the ultrasound monitor, and I wrote a little poem to my baby and just apologized that Mommy couldn't give you a chance at life. Those were the last words of my poem. That's all I remember about it. And that did bring some healing during that time to my heart. And then after the bleeding stopped and I went back to school, I tucked that secret deep, deep down inside of me, and no one else ever knew about it except for a close friend at school. But there were times when I didn't even remember that I had an abortion. That's how deeply I tucked it down inside of me, and I tried to just move on and pretend like it never happened. But looking back, I started to struggle with self-confidence issues that I had never had before. I also struggled with anxiety and depression, and I lost a bunch of weight after my abortion. I just had no appetite anymore. I felt at times like I had no reason to live, and I had suicidal thoughts. I used to think about taking my life all the time after my abortion. And when I got out of high school, my life took a downward spiral where I was doing whatever I could to numb the pain that I felt. And I didn't realize that it was because of my abortion. Drinking was a big one, just always wanting to numb my pain with alcohol. Staying too busy was also another one. I never liked to be alone, to have time to think about anything. I would rather just go. But I did finally settle down and start to have a family of my own. And when my children were born, all of them were born early. And my first daughter in particular, I had a very rocky pregnancy with her and almost lost her several times. And I was too ashamed to tell my OBGYN that I had had an abortion in my past. And it wasn't until baby number 5 that I was able to be honest about that. And the doctor questioned if that's why I had an incompetent cervix with my first pregnancy because of my abortion. And all of my pregnancies thereafter, all my babies were born early. So that was something that was brought to my attention. And then when I was 28 years old, I started to really see my great need for healing, because it didn't matter how beautiful my life was with my family and my awesome children, and everything was great, but there was still this empty hole inside of me. And it took a few women at my church to approach me about my pain and to literally draw the truth out of me, to draw that deep, dark secret out of me about the abortion. And I did confess about my abortion, and that was my invitation to start to receive healing. I had a relationship with the Lord, and I sat in church for years and years, getting healing from many other things, but never realizing that I needed healing specifically from the pain that the abortion caused me. And I'm so thankful for those women who were willing to approach me and willing to take the time to help me to surrender that secret, because I was then taken on a path of healing through post-abortive ministry and book study and counseling. And I sit here today and I can testify to you that I am healed from the pain of my abortion. And I just want women to know that there is hope and there is healing for you, just like there was for me. And I realize now, after looking back and healing from my abortion, that abortion did not help me. It did not secure my future. It did not make my future better. It hurt me and it hurt my future. It actually stole and robbed a precious human being that should have been a part of my life. And that's something that I can never change or get back. And since healing from my abortion, I have made it my life's work to share my abortion story with anyone, anytime that the door opens, because my heart is for everyone to know the truth that abortion didn't help me, abortion hurt me. And it didn't just hurt me, it hurt my children. My children wish that they had that sibling in their life. And I want people to know too about the lies that the abortion industry tells women when they're inside the walls of that clinic. We know that an 8-week-old fetus has everything. And they never told me any of that. They tried to tell me that I was early enough that I should have a clean conscience to go through with the abortion, and that's simply not true. And then the next clinic told me that my baby was more like an alien than a human, and that is a lie. That is dehumanizing an innocent human being. And so I hope that my story inspires you today to know the truth, because we need to speak the truth and we need to speak it loudly.